What is up, everybody? It's me, Duke Farley, back at it again here on Lost at Sea, and I am joined to talk about episode 7 of Ascendance Live, season 3, with Scott. Scott, what is going on? Congratulations. I said this before, but congratulations on getting married.
Thank you. I will be using that as an excuse for falling behind on my notes for this season. So, a disclaimer right away. If I say something that sounds stupid, if I don't remember an alliance, if a player's watching and saying Scott has no idea what he's talking about, it's probably true. I've been busy. Mental headspace has been crowded, but yeah, glad to be married and have free time again so I could hang out and chat about Ascendance.
Yes, and so we are in episode 7, and we saw the first vote of everybody together voting after the food chain challenge, and only I think
Mm.
6 people were eligible to be voted this round. Were you surprised with the 2 names that ended up coming up, Ozzy and Emily?
No, not at all. This season so far has been a trend of like everyone is playing nice. There's a lot of friendship, a lot of good vibes, and not to say you can't vote someone off if you're not friends with them, but it's been very much like I want to be in the majority in some ways. I'm gonna like which name has momentum. The whole like Keaton being safe one round. Some people in kind of a spiral of how do we make a decision if we can't vote Keaton, right? So the names
Mhm.
out there were Ozzy and Emily. So it's the momentum was there. The momentum kept going. I think it's maybe a condition of being in a live game where there's not a lot of time to talk between different between different eliminations. So you just kind of keep the ball moving where it's moving. And if your name's not one of the names moving, then you have your interest in keeping that momentum wherever else it is. So yeah, not so surprised with those names being up still.
Surprised at all with it being such a the only person that voted with Emily here was CJ,
Mm.
and surprised basically with all of the people that were on her number one no fear alliance kind of not voting with her, just voting her out.
Yeah, I feel like the No Fear Alliance maybe started before more of the drama took place. So me, right? If I remember the sequence of events here. So maybe once Emily started getting tangled in some of the discourse around can we trust her, can we not trust her, maybe that kind of flipped some hearts and minds. I also, it feels more like we're operating in a bit of trust clusters here versus, taking that from Survivor 33 versus the whole like solid alliances. So um, I was really struggling to even think of like what are the clear alliances going on. It seems like there's people that are kind of clicking in certain ways, and of course are working more together. But yeah, I guess I'm not surprised to see them kind of jump ship on Emily in that way, just because it's where the momentum was going. I will say, and we can talk more about CJ. I feel like I was trying to sort players in different mental buckets, and the one that's hardest for me to place is CJ because I feel like generally he's playing a very open and honest game, and I actually really think it's a unique approach to this game that can buy him a lot of goodwill. And I think it's come up before that we know, CJ will be honest. We know he's a player we can depend on, and we should keep him because of that. So it was in character to stick with Emily. But it was weird that he lied about that like pendant piece for me because it felt really out of character for how people see him, and I'm wondering if that might jeopardize people's perception of him.
Yeah, you're just talking about how CJ said that Emily has a pendant of power when she really doesn't. I
Yeah,
have not under I don't understand why that was a thing that he brought up.
yeah. I was trying to track for a while. I'm like, did he just, things information kind of gets funky, but it sounded like he said, "Oh, I was doing this to help you," and I don't know how that would help her necessarily. Maybe we're afraid of putting votes on Emily. Let's go on Ozzy instead. But at the end of the day, if it's gonna be a vote split, then you might as well load up on the person who you think has a pendant and hope they go home. So I'm not sure about that. I guess I'd be curious to learn more about why CJ did that in that moment. Because I don't think it set up Emily who we want to work with, and it also kind of shook people's confidence that you could take his word at face value. I will say it's funny. He's like, I'm sending one of my final twos home. I'm like, well, man, you can only have one final two authentically. but I know all about having a lot of final twos in any game. It's kind of the approach. So yeah,
Yeah, we've seen that before. We've seen that strategy.
yeah, for sure.
Um, CJ was this was the first time that he was safe in the game so far.
Hmm.
So it was interesting to see him play from that position. And obviously it didn't really work out for him in the way of his ally going, one of his final two going home. So, but I wanted to ask you, Scott. I remember hosting Food Chain in your season of the Org of Ascendance, and I
Yes.
remember being in the Sky region when Brian messed up the same way that Rocky messed up tonight and did not eat for whatever reason. He spared the person that was in the sky with him
Hmm.
because he thought he had it won, but he did not. Is it
Yeah.
crazy that we're all the way into, all these seasons and people are still making that mistake in the sky?
I don't know if it's that wild because this food chain game is funny. First of all, I'm just gonna say I have this random clothespin. I have no idea why it's on my desk. And then we did this thing where you have to stick a clothespin on someone's thing. Anyway, very strange. I don't know where it came from. Back on topic. I'm curious about this. Just sorry, I'm going to zoom out and talk about the challenge. It seems like it's a staple in Ascendance Live, and I guess Ascendance the org. I didn't follow the most recent org, so I'm not sure if we did it again. But
Yep.
like I played it. I guess I was out the first round when I did it in my work seasons. I don't really understand the strategy of it. But I'm like, can you start really studying this game? Is it really based on luck? Is it based on dynamics? Like it's hard to really figure out. But I will say having a general competency of your character and being able to read the conditions is like the
Crucial.
first thing to do. But also it's very difficult because you're in this pressure cooker and you're like trying to also use your position in a way to also build trust. So even if you don't win, you're showing goodwill with people. So I mean, at the end of the day, Rocky's not in trouble. Sucks for him. I guess you sweat a little bit, but maybe he bought good faith with people who he didn't attack, right? Maybe you piss someone off more if you go after them, although people seem generally understanding that it's the nature of food chains to need to stick that clothespin on someone.
Yeah. It's just always so I was so like on call with Brian when he messed that up in the sky on your season. I told Nicole, I was like, I can't break the news to him. You have to come on call and do it. It's
Yeah.
it's always so brutal.
Yeah. I will say also, Brian survived that. It would suck to go home because you just like missed one little like wording part of your condition.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I guess good to know that that wasn't a game ender for anyone.
Yeah, so for future Ascendance Live players, Ascendance Org players, definitely count on this being a competition. It always is, and just read those conditions. That's
Yeah.
ask if you don't know. You know,
Yeah. That sounds about right. I can't give any more wisdom about this challenge because even watching it, I'm like, I don't know.
it's tough to
Sounds
follow.
far. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a little
yeah.
tough to follow. I will say it was cool to see some people just like use the space to say we're here in this room for what 10 minutes or so. Let's talk strategy or let's make this connection. Because you're using every opportunity to do that. And super cool to see Rory like being like, I'm out, but let me scan the room and there's another advantage there. So yeah, I guess you always make the most of any situation in this game, and that's how you kind of create your own luck.
Yes, you mentioned Rory being out first, getting that half pendant of power, but at the end of this
Mm.
episode, it seems like that's not going to be really um effective now that Emily is taking the other half with her to the jury house.
We love a good souvenir. I do wonder if they'll place that back in the game or not, knowing that she took it out. But yeah, it was funny. I think Billy had that confidence. He was gonna get willed the half pendant. I was also a little worried, like if you like, is it even smart for you to want your ally to give you a half pendant of power in front of everyone else, right? So maybe it's for the best that Billy didn't get it. It just seems to put a target on your back that a lot of the bequeathing, whatever that word would be, needs to happen publicly. So, um, yeah,
I You mentioned that, and I remember in the episode Rocky saying that if Rory were to be voted out, he did not want to be given the other half of
mm,
competitive power. Kind of crazy. I've never seen people not wanting power as they're getting voted out.
Oh, give me a full pendant. Maybe you're giving me half a pendant. That just puts a potential question mark on my head, right? I don't know. I can see the logic. A
I
lot of these
guess.
powers, first of all, I'm going to zoom out again. Production is doing an amazing job. Maybe it's that maybe everyone's talking about it every podcast, and I'm not up to date on the podcast. Sorry, but
It's
the
all good.
quality of this season is like tenfold better and more amazing than anything they've done. So just massive kudos production, like the sound quality and all it's great. I guess I need to start having a little Survivor edition of this is the advantage someone has next to their name. Because oh man, I forgot. But there's a
Well,
lot of
Scott, if
powers.
you are in on the Discord, I do post the Power Watch every week, so you
Oh
could
fuck.
know that.
Me on social media or any platform, not the best. But okay, I can't access the Discord. But so thank you for your service. And I will say a lot of these powers are cool and have potential value, but I'm
Hmm.
not sure how many I would want bequeathed to me publicly. Like switch teams or I don't know, sit someone out of the captain's challenge. You don't want
Yeah,
that to be something that people look at you at when really the potential for it has some limits on it.
right. And so a couple powers leaving the game this week, we see that Emily plays her Ascendance advantage. It only makes it to this is the advantage that was supposed to grow within power between
Mm.
days. And it got to steal a vote. Obviously, she steals Ozzy's vote. Um, and she takes that half-handed of power out with her. But I wanted to ask you, me and Drew spoke last week about
Mm.
Emily and Ozzy being the people that were, in the drama and their names were out. They were the names that were not the people voted out. Now Ozzy's the person that was not voted out again. Do you think
Mm.
Ozzy has longevity? Do you think he can pivot and make a deep run here, or do you think it's just going to be status quo again?
I think right now we're operating on status quo, so Ozzy would need to really shift the tides. The fact that, only CJ voted for him, I think shows that there are people who see value in that relationship, which is promising. I think Ozzy's chance at survival would obviously drastically increase if he's safe, but even just safer around, right? Able to kind of let things breathe, have other names go out. If he goes straight back to an elimination, you know, if I was doing power rankings for next week, Ozzy would be low on there because
Yeah,
just how things have been going so far. Um, so it's not to count Ozzy out. People obviously will go to bat for him to some degree. But I also remember hearing people say, like, I don't feel connected to either Emily or Ozzy. So I'm a little bit worried just based on what the episodes have been giving. Um, but I will say Ozzy's been a lot of fun to watch. So um, definitely pulling for him. I think one of the drawbacks of ranking is, of course, I'm rooting for Emily to stay over Ozzy because she's on my team. But I'm like, no, I don't want Ozzy to go either. So, but you know how it is when you are doing any sort of draft, you by nature have to root for whoever's on your side. Although Emily's great in her own way too. So,
yes, and Emily leaving, I think, is gonna leave a. I think she was a great addition to live. She was a great
for
player.
sure.
Great TV, brought some
Mm-hmm.
drama, brought some good gameplay as well. So super sad to lose her this early, but hopefully I can get an exit interview with her sometime next week and we can talk about all the good stuff and dispel the
Yeah.
rumors of her dating Billy.
Yes, I believe so. I was telling Duke, this is the first time I really followed live with the episode. I think Emily said the long distance relationship would have been her and Billy's height difference, not necessarily him living in Australia, but we can debunk that rumor for YouTube. So YouTube live chat, thank you all for giving us some content. Where would that have come from though? I don't know. The things you hear in these games just it's either I'm assuming it's more a game of telephone versus someone starting that as a rumor because it's a kind of wacky rumor to pull out of your
Yeah.
arsenal to kind of spread in the game.
I think another huge thing that was happening in the live chat were people talking about Kiara's pants, how great they were.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait, what? I thought it was Rory's pants, which match his shirt, but no. Okay, there's a lot of pant
A
game
lot of great
happening.
outfits. A lot of
I
great
think we
outfits.
commented on this in the draft. The outfits do, it's the strategy of the outfit, right? Like kind of
Stepping it
having
up this year.
was gonna say, yeah, having a fun outfit makes people be like, oh, I want to work with them, or oh, they're a fun person, or oh, they're just lighthearted. They're not gonna backstab me. So maybe there is some game, I don't know, strategy around the planned outfits.
Maybe. But Scott, I think let me ask you this. Who do you think is positioned good right now to make a deep run here?
Okay. This will be where I kind of go off into my notes of like my
Sure.
little categories of people. And there's
Okay.
three people playing from the front. And this is just like my silly read. No one put stock into this. Don't get offended. Because these people are people who I think have a really strong case to win if they make it to the end right now. And they also create a little bit of chaos. I've seen their ability to kind of stir the pot. And that's going to be Josh, Billy, and my winner pick, I'm sticking with it, is Taylor. She's going to win the season. I called Drew. I think last time we had a conversation, I felt it. I'm feeling that vibe with Taylor.
Okay.
I do have a lot of contenders still though, so I'm not as confident. Drew was like, "Oh man, this man's winning," for just that vibe. I think the three of them are showing their ability to kind of navigate a lot of different relationships. Think about bringing in the different advantages to their game, kind of how to use the advantages they have and mitigate the risk of other advantages in the game. So I think the three of them are really interesting characters to watch as people who I would put some money on. But then there's like this group of people, like a contingent, I'm kind of thinking are a little bit under the radar, but not in like a they're not playing sort of way. They're just, I think, building a lot of social capital, which they're banking for later. So I really like a couple examples. Kira, I think, is on that level. It seems that, kind of a quiet game right now, but a lot of people see value in working with her. And I think she will be able to get a lot of trust. I would be like surprised to see people flip on her. Rocky, once again, like kind of, his name's come up, but it gets shot down. And there's a reason for that. Rocky's really good at building relationships. He's a really social person. And I think he knows when to strike. Ali, I think, is also in that kind of bucket. Like a lot of fun, but Ali doesn't come just to, be the comic relief or entertainment. He's coming to play the game, and I know he's done a lot of different orgs when it hurt. So I think he has that. I think someone really interesting for me is AJ, and we can maybe reflect on that a little bit. I'm wondering, once again, we only see the episodes. I haven't seen a lot of people talk about AJ, but I feel like AJ's in his head, like he knows he's a name in the org community. He knows he's kind of like a threat. I'm wondering if he's putting or thinking of himself as a threat because he knows he's that good, where people should see him as a threat. But I just don't see people saying his name in the game yet. So I'm wondering, like, if he's almost worrying a little bit too much about how people see him. I will say that even though he hasn't been part of votes as someone vulnerable, the fact that you're able to at least engage in some votes and like be part of that conversation, like this vote, he's safe, but he's still voting. So he's still able to build trust without being at risk. So I'm also really interested by him. And then I think Marcelo as well. I think he's kind of building that social capital. CJ, like I said, is a bit of an enigma for me because once again, I could see him winning in some ways. I could see him going soon if people are kind of like, oh, he will go rogue agents. And then I think the last bucket of players are people who are a bit more like emotional in the way that, not in a bad way. I'm a very emotional person too. But like Ozzy, for example, I think I really invested in like that situation with Emily. Things like, instead of like bringing it down, things just kind of stayed a little high. And him and Sarah being, and so Sarah in this vein too, I think I really wrapped up in that. So they're still being picked as that pair. So I'm curious to see how their games can benefit each other versus staying as like an obvious target when we know there's so many other pairs in the game that are maybe even stronger than them. And then my man Rory, from season 8 of Ascendance, I'm interested to see where his game goes. To feel like he had like an episode where he was just like in a mental funk, which I've been in many an org situation, and I feel like he's now more in the game. But I'm still sensing a lot of people are like his name's kind of coming up. It's not sticking, which is good. But I'm wondering about his longevity as well, because it sounds like some people didn't trust him. Like, oh, Rory's like went back and relayed the information from like the Emily chat down to the other room or whatever it was. And yeah, but I will say I do appreciate that Rory is also using his advantage now to like build trust and he's building capital. So there's kind of these different buckets of players. I think the people I'm watching most are like Taylor, Billy, Kira, Rocky. Maybe those are my four right now, but I could see a lot of people going. Like I wouldn't be surprised by anyone left winning at this point in the game. As a
And I
long,
want to
sorry, a long response to your question.
No, it's great. I love that you kind of outline where you kind of view everybody, and like kind of the different tiers. I want to talk to you about AJ. You mentioned, he gives us a confessional, like a live confessional
Yeah,
about his perception on how people are viewing him. And I want to ask you, do you think that if AJ next round loses and is eligible to be voted, do you think people will jump at the bit to vote him out, or do you think that he's got a round or two in him, or do you think he'd be safe in that scenario? Obviously, depending on
yeah.
how the team shake out.
So I would never vote someone off because they've been safe a lot. Like I don't really follow that logic. I guess it could stem from either because they've been safe a lot, we haven't built trust through votes, or um, maybe they're a challenge threat or to some degree. But like, if you trust AJ, you trust AJ and you want to keep him, right? And it sounds like AJ just feels like a very calming personality. People seem to go to him as like a sounding board. I don't feel like he's overplaying at all. So I think he's in a really good spot. I don't know why someone would say, okay, AJ's been safe a lot. Now we should vote him off. Like it's still so early. So if you see a value in AJ in your game, keep AJ. And I think people do see value in him. So I would be surprised to see him go soon. I actually like I could see him winning this game if he figures out how to like start taking like this. I guess because he hasn't been part of as many votes and he's not actively driving it, which I think is a good thing. He just hasn't had as much on his like resume, kind of the dirty word sometimes because it's all about the resume. It's not necessarily all about resume, it's about social connections. But I do think he needs to just figure out how to shift those social connections to a couple moves that will give him that like gravitas in front of a jury to say, like, I played this outstanding game.
And what kind of is separating Billy, Taylor, and I think you mentioned Josh
Yeah.
as people that you think are front runners to win right now?
Yeah, and let me make the distinction. I don't think they're even front runners to win. I think they're just playing like the more active games. But as we all, I don't know, anyone who watches Survivor, any last winner, none of them were front runners, so to speak, halfway
Gabler.
through the season. A lot of it is figuring out when to be in the driver's seat and when to be in the passenger seat. And a lot of it is being in the passenger seat, so long as you're still playing an active role, but not necessarily the big driver, right? I think Josh, Taylor, and Billy, these are just people in my head. There's been others, but like we've seen more confessionals from them. So once again, it's what we're being shown, but like see more professionals about kind of some like deviousness, like Billy, or I guess like Josh being like, I'm gonna backstab Billy with his idol. I think that's the thing, right? Like people play. Taylor's like, I'm gonna keep stirring the pot, right? I think Billy's doing such a good job. He's a very like he's being very vulnerable with people, which it's not. I don't think facade. It's just who he is. He's showing his true self, but he's saving that kind of like sass and that like bit of a cunningness for confessionals. I love every single one of his like voting confessionals. Just has this like zinger attached. It's a lot of fun to watch him. So I think he's doing a great job at it. But I just think these are players where I'm seeing not afraid to stir the pot. Whereas I see other players kind of taking their time and having a really measured approach to this game and kind of focusing on like building relationships in a way that they're trying to figure out like how can I later transition this relationship into a move for myself. So it's not even to say like there's different tiers. I think people are just playing differently and we'll see what prevails. Sometimes the emotional player does win because they've had the ups and downs. Sometimes it's the player who was a bit more measured that has a late game two or three different moves they can say. Sometimes it's the person who's just in front the whole time or can say I was kind of active and causing chaos the entire time and so I used to my advantage. So I think it's just gonna be interesting for me to see which approach kind of comes out on top here.
I want to ask you about which player are you going to enjoy, do you think, more? Billy is kind of the person that's a little bit vulnerable. But he's playing really calm, cool, collected. He has the pendant of power. Um, but then we see Josh, right? He's
Mm-hmm.
kind of a little bit also calm, cool, collected, but willing to cut anyone, it seems like, willing
Yeah.
to stab the invisible knife in the back. And he just let go of one of his close allies, Emily, without really any. gripe at all. Didn't really care
Yeah.
too much about it. Um, which one of those like do you think would prevail?
Oh, it's interesting. I guess I am also, I don't know if I've seen enough of their games. I'm a little bit biased towards Billy because I played like a mini with him. I'm a bit more familiar with his name in the community. And I think it's really, I can relate to the struggle of like, how do I be genuine and show my emotional side because I want to connect with people while also wanting to be in a game where I can be cutthroat and making sure that like people see my ability to connect as a human like desire versus me using this as a game move, right? So I feel like some of the like not struggles, but some of the things he's brought up this game are really relatable to me. So that's why I feel like I just really enjoy watching Billy because I see that balance of like I'm here to have fun and play just a fun game with everyone where we don't cross lines and we're here to get to know each other while also saying I'm going to play hard. So I enjoy
Yeah.
watching Billy. I do think Josh, it's really cool. This just I don't know. It's fun to see him being like, yeah, I'm going to do whatever it takes to win, and I'm going to kind of cause a little chaos. I'm trying to remember who from the preseason was like, I'm going to be this massive villain. It might have been CJ actually. There was I'm trying. I wish I almost revisited my like preseason notes before this just to see how people are actually playing versus how they said they were going to play.
Josh, when he was talking to me, said that he's coming in and it's just a business trip for him. So
Okay.
he does it. He's willing to cut anyone.
I'm seeing a bit of that. And I think as long as you can kind of conceal that a little bit, right? Like you still need to get votes at the end. And you also need people to like believe that you will keep them around. Like people want to feel safe with you. So if it gets out like, oh, Josh and Emily were super close and he cut her, without a second thought, that's a little scary to align with that person, unless I can see the full logic into why they would want to keep me, but you never know. So, I don't think people are talking about that necessarily. I don't think I'm hearing Josh's name a lot. Has it come up?
Not up
No.
to this point. No.
Yeah. So clearly he's doing something very well where, and I think he's part of like is it the
It,
alliance, the five,
it, it was called No Fear, but
no
it is
fear.
now only four people.
Okay. So little, yeah, no fear -1, I guess. Yeah, I think he's in a
Little
pretty
fear.
good spot. Yeah, a little fear. Yeah, or no fear to lose an ally, but what does that mean about your alliance? I don't know, because those four did not come rally around Emily, but at least they were kind of voting together, or at least in a way that was transparent. So maybe they
Yeah.
self-trust together. Yeah.
And then the only other question I have, I don't know if I've spoken about it on the podcast much, but I do enjoy Ali a lot in terms of just kind of watching him in the votes. It seems like he definitely is the comedic relief. I feel like he's so like he's even though he's under pressure this round, like of being voted out, like he's still like joking around like, oh, don't vote me, like saying that
Yeah.
to people. Um, and you mentioned him in one of the tiers where you could see him potentially like even winning. So I wanted to hear what your thought on Ali is, and do you think he has a genuine shot of getting to the end and winning?
It's hard to like see him as a front runner just because I don't know if what we've seen in these YouTube videos, right? Once again, I'm just seeing whatever's put out to us. I don't know if we've seen that like narrative yet, but it's still early, right? And I don't know.
Yeah,
I think people like Ali. People see him as a fun person to be around. And that goes a long way, especially in like a very high stress situation. I don't think Ali's made any big blunders yet. I don't think he's broken any big trust. I don't think people see him as the massive threat. I think in a lot of shows we've seen the person who is kind of the comic relief or the fun personality win. So I don't know if people are listening haven't watched all the Survivor seasons, but there's definitely been some recent examples I'm thinking of. That spoiler. So yeah, I could see him winning. He's not like in my top 5, but I wouldn't be surprised. Also, comic relief. Ozzy was so much fun this episode with this little couch situation, just talking to himself. So that was also kind of one of the laughs of this episode. So just to give a little shout out there.
shout out to Ozzy being the chameleon and the alligator in the forest by himself. Crazy.
Yes. Yes. First fire. Yeah, I guess I don't know how that I forget how it all divides. I guess only go to some some of the habitats, and I guess he just chose his lone one. But yeah.
Yep, but he did that. So, Scott, thank you as always for coming on the podcast. I think that's about it with this episode and kind of getting your thoughts on, how you're viewing these players. I appreciate you coming on and talking about it.
Cool. A reminder, please follow Lost at Sea Pod on Instagram. Give that a follow, follow. I think I'm the first guest since the Instagram popped up. So
New Instagram, we're posting reels, and new logo. So go ahead and follow that. Thank you for the shout out, Scott.
yeah.
I appreciate
And
it.
just to give a shout out to Emily, I'm sorry you left. Thank you for all the points for my team and my draft for finding all these advantages. And an early congratulations to Sam, who will be winning this draft. Her team is stacked and solid, but my team will not finish last, and that's all I wanted. So just to talk about myself and my team for a little bit. Yeah,
You got some more points this episode with the half pendant.
She pulled through. I'm not just I do no regrets picking her for my team, and she's been really fun to watch in this show. And I think we'll see how the game shifts without having that big target. There's always one big target that stays. It was Keaton, then it's Emily, and we'll see who that becomes now. Maybe it's Ozzy, maybe it's someone else.
All righty, Scott. I
All
appreciate
right.
you.